Just win, baby. And that's exactly what the Indianapolis Colts did. We all heard the Jimmers say tweet, or I should say we read it, defeating the Las Vegas Raiders in Jeff Saturday's debut. Pointing forward, looking out, gets a little bit tougher this week. Thought we'd bring on Kevin Bowen to kind of discuss a little bit of that and just current events as we kind of tie a bow on this celebration week. Kevin, we've said on our show, we are going to celebrate all week long. We're not going to we got plenty of time to get into the what ifs and, all of these different scenarios, but just your initial reactions from the game on Sunday and just how it looked a little bit different and from your perspective anyways.
Yeah. And kudos to you for, I think, taking that approach. I tried to take that with our morning show on Monday of, you live in this NFL world for 17, 18 weeks. I am probably more of a big picture guy than most, but you don't need to necessarily go there 24/7. And I think in such a chaotic, one of the wilder weeks you'll ever see for an NFL team, to win that game should be celebrated. And I think guys in that locker room deserve a lot of credit. I thought it was a reminder to me of a Chris Ballard belief that I'm fully on board with. And I probably had initial skepticism or more just initial, like every GM says that. But I think the high character aspect to players Ballard wants to acquire, I think you saw that Sunday. If you watch how those two teams reacted to bad plays and just each other and how they carried themselves throughout the game, the penalty stat certainly indicates it. I thought you just saw a more disciplined football team. Offensively, defensively, same song and dance from the defense, really, especially early on. I felt like Adams and Jacobs would make their presence felt at some point. They did there for a stretch. And then the two plays by Bobby Okereke and Stephon Gilmore, if this season, has kind of a magical turnaround, I think you can point to those two, certainly. And then offensively, I thought Parks Frazier was a man of his word. I mean, he did simplify. I thought committed more guys to pass protection. Matt Ryan, I thought, operated really well. Just the one, bad play, and still that bad play was taking the sack, and it still ended with a kick, even though you missed it, was a step in the right direction. And as much as we talked about Jeff Saturday and Matt Ryan and all the other storylines, I just thought Jonathan Taylor looked healthy again. And that's huge, just absolutely vital for this team moving forward, particularly for Sunday. But I thought you finally supported your quarterback, and that hasn't been there this season.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Bobby Okereke, and I'm glad you brought that up. Kevin, this season's probably over if he doesn't make that play, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, it's that simple. I mean, he was beat, but he recovered, and just this principle of, I don't know if he's learned a little bit of that from Shaq Leonard, to knock the ball away and just to keep fighting. He doesn't make that play, and we said it on the instant reaction. We are not sitting here talking about all of these. This is not a happy week, and we're probably definitely pointing, out towards next season at that point. So I'm glad you brought that up. Next question for you. Just really wanted to get your perspective on this. Jeff Saturday has to do what for you in your mind in order to say, hey, this is a viable coaching candidate? It's not as much about wins and losses, right?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And to be honest, I don't have a great answer. First off, like predicting how Jim Irsay is going to think and react is beyond foolish. Yeah. But even in my own eyes, like I'm trying to think, what do I want to see? Like, can I see those things? A lot of it is behind the scenes. From a win-loss standpoint, yeah, a record is not the end-all, be-all. I do think you want to see a football team that continues to play acceptable football and a little bit better than that, even though the schedule is going to get tougher. But I think it's very difficult to kind of properly evaluate. Certainly the offensive line will have a little bit more eyes on it, and just how the team reacts to the message as the emotional jolt inevitably wears off. When adversity hits, how do you kind of react to some of that stuff? The in-game pressure was definitely there on Sunday as more of those moments start to appear in the final 7 weeks. Again, how does Saturday handle that? I thought he handled the few kind of in-game situations really, really well. If I was nitpicking one, not taking a time out there late when the Raiders ran off some time, could have been costly. But that was really it. I mean, he had the proper challenge. He mentioned it on Monday. I kind of asked him a question about how, what surprised you on game day. And I think in one of his answers, he mentioned like when Alec Pierce makes that catch on the first third down of the game, and it looks like, based off people in the booth that he dropped it, you've got to make sure you relay that to your offense and try and get them up to the line of scrimmage as quick as possible so McDaniels doesn't get that challenge flag out. So just the fact that he kind of has the grasp and the wherewithal to acknowledge that, realize it, learn from it. I think that's all really, really important stuff on game day for him to handle. So yeah, it just kind of boils down, to this really. I just feel like if Jeff Saturday wants to be here next year, he will be. And I don't know, that might be me speaking a little bit emotional on November 17th, but I think he's got that rapport with Jim Irsay. And knowing how Irsay operates, I could see him going down that path. Again, we're still some hurdles away from that. I mean, there could come a point in time next month or Saturday's like, this is too much. It's just it's too much for grind. I'd rather do the ESPN gig a couple days a week and, continue doing what I was doing. But certainly a week or so into it, I think this is, I thought it was kind of a 50-50, half consultant, half interim head coach, potentially the head coach a week ago. Now I'm like, this is more 70-30, 80-20.
Yeah, 100%. I like the CEO approach. I know you've mentioned it on the pod earlier this week. There's something about that when you can just really manage the whole game and the inner workings of the whole game. You don't have this pressure on, just one side of the football or the other. And, I thought it was a little bit odd. I think everybody thought it was a little bit odd bringing in Jeff. But he's been very, very transparent with the media. He's been very, I think, transparent with the football team. Like, he doesn't know how this is going to play out, but I don't think that he will put Jim Irsay in that position. Like, if he doesn't do a good job, this won't be one of those things where he's like, come on, Jim, give me a chance. He'll just be honest and forthright and say, hey, this is not for me. You brought me here to see what's going on. I'm gonna give you the honest evaluation, and then life goes on, and then you start that, head coaching search as it goes on. Question for you, Rodgers and Faison. We've had this weird dichotomy all year where we've just felt like we've had to get both of them on the field. Rodgers seems to have an uptick, just being on the field. What do you think that Gus Bradley sees in Faison that makes him say, I've got to have him on the field for this set amount of plays? Is it just a style that he's trying to play with him on the field, or is it more of just he just doesn't fully believe in Rodgers in all of the biggest moments?
Yeah, one thing I do want to sneak in before I go there is just to your CEO point about Saturday. I think it's also so important to have that Monday through Saturday. Game day is game day, and it's chaos. And again, I am a big believer in that on game day. But, making sure that, Frank Reich had to be in all of those offensive meetings. If the D-line was playing bad or Frank had some questions about, hey, we're playing Jalen Hurts this week, I really want to see how our front seven defensive meetings are going and, the alignment and the assignment and those keys. He just didn't feel like he could be in those meetings. So I think having that type of head coach as well helps in that area. Maybe you want to go to special teams for a week. Maybe you feel like, hey, I want to be here for this Thursday meeting because I feel like we can bust a return or we need to control field position, especially. So I just think being in touch with a little bit more of your entire roster helps out in that area too. As far as Rodgers and Faison is concerned, it's head scratching. I have the same questions you do. I'm trying to think back to a Gus Bradley answer a few weeks ago, basically saying you need 4 corners to survive a season. I agree with that to a degree, but I don't necessarily think that means that you've got to play all 4 of them, on game days. Faison's a guy that undrafted and special teamer a little bit early in his career. Like, it's not like he's been a 16-game starter from day one and a first-round pick. He's used to coming off the bench. He's used to playing that sort of role. I think what he likes with Faison is certainly familiarity with their scheme. I think he likes his length. That is not something that Rodgers has as a strength. But, boy, at some point, and wasn't Sunday just another example of this, of Isaiah Rodgers is just not afraid of the moment, and he just makes plays on the ball. I'll never forget watching his UMass film and just thinking to myself, this is Kenny Moore type instincts. Kenny has got a great knack for just knowing where to position his body, and you rarely see Kenny flagged And I think Isaiah kind of has that as well, of his timing, his instinctual nature to the corner position is pretty special. And let's look at the wideouts on the schedule. I mean, you're going to see it Sunday with Brown and Smith. You're going to see it with Deontay Johnson. You're going to see it with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I mean, you're going to face some pretty darn good wideouts here coming up. So the number is certainly starting to shift more in the Rodgers direction. I would like it to shift a little bit more, but it does seem like Gus wants to make sure that Faison's still out there for a couple series a game. On the Moreau touchdown, I mean, Faison had pretty good. I thought it was a really good catch by Foster Moreau there, but still, it just Rodgers is a guy that he just rises to the occasion, and I think that's such a beautiful quality to have in a corner.
Yeah, I mean, I've said all along, this defense really has two players like that, right? Shaq Leonard, obviously, who's had the surgery, he's not been involved this year like he has been in the years past. And I really feel like Rodgers gives you a little bit of that same quality. I mean, for such a slight guy, I mean, you see him punch the football out. You see him react and, make some really nice interceptions in the past. I don't know if this defense is really predicated off of getting turnovers like the Eberflus, era was, but still they've been solid. I mean, and as we transition into the defense, Pro Bowl voting's getting ready to kind of kick up and everything. We're probably not going to have 7 Pro Bowlers this year, but one guy I think probably we should pound the table for is Grover Stewart, man. I mean, that guy has been the guy all year long, and I don't think we talk about him enough on this podcast, especially. I mean, he's just been awesome. So just from your vantage point, how he's kind of every year over year, gotten better and better and better to where he's at right now, where he's a dominant defensive force. Just your thoughts on Grover.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. We had Joel Erickson on our morning show today, and I brought up Grover to him, and it was fun just talking about him for a few minutes because, again, I think he deserves more of that. What stands out to me about Grover, a lot of things. First off, he signed the big deal a couple years ago, and his play has ascended from there. It's not something that you see, especially, and I'm stereotyping probably a little bit here, but I would garner that day 2 small school draft picks that sign a second contract. Maybe there is a complacency factor, or I feel like I've arrived. I think the scheme change has helped Grover out big time. This is no space heater. This is Nate Ollie's defensive line approach and Gus Bradley ultimately saying get upfield and get upfield right away. Grover just makes plays. I mean, he leads the NFL in tackles for defensive tackles, and he's a nose tackle. That is so rare. As far as Pro Bowl, I feel like we have to splice Pro Bowl into 2 categories. One is, will they be in the game, or will they earn whatever it is, skill challenge now? And then do they deserve to be in the game? Grover, without question, deserves. Now, he's not going to be a Pro Bowler. If he is, the Pro Bowl voting will shock me like no other, because the Pro Bowl voting is a popularity contest. Let's be honest. No fans outside of Indianapolis are voting for Grover Stewart. That's a third vote. It's a third coach, and it's a third player. I've watched players vote for the Pro Bowl. As much as I'd like to think they really spend time and look at the ballot, name recognition matters. Who they played with in college matters. Who they played against in college matters. And Albany State schedule, unfortunately, did not lend Grover to those opportunities. So I'll be stunned if he gets into the Pro Bowl. But again, that to me does not diminish the season that he's had. I know Pro Bowl matters, though, to guys, especially to a guy like Grover. It's name recognition. I mean, when they announce Jack Doyle at future speaking functions, they're going to say 2-time Pro Bowler Jack Doyle. It's just it carries some weight there. But just his playmaking, man, a little bit more of third down stuff from him. Jeff Saturday had some great comments about Grover yesterday. He compared him to Tarek Glenn and just kind of an infectious personality, a guy you want to be around. He creates an ease, and you just want to laugh with him. And then he gets on the field, and he's an absolute terror and just dominates the middle of the line of scrimmage. He'll be massive on Sunday for sure. And, when you're facing a Dallas team later on, or you're facing Saquon Barkley or Dalvin Cook, he's going to be big in those matchups, of course. And, he's durable. He's rarely on the injury report. I mean, they've given him some rest days this year, probably because his pitch count's a little higher, but I can't recall many, if any, times the guy's ever been hurt in his career. So I'm glad you brought him up, Zach, because he deserves it. He's a stud.
Yeah, man, 100%. I think DeForest Buckner said this. I'm not positive about it. He said Grover has finally realized that he's bigger, faster, stronger than everybody he's going against. It just takes time sometimes to get that confidence and just that belief in yourself. And you can definitely see it on the field. So I guess moving in and transitioning before we get off here, going into the Eagles game, I don't really have a lot of expectations other than the fact that, the Commanders kind of put out a blueprint. You can run the football against them. We're catching them at a time where they're probably not as healthy as they have been in the past. Um, just some expectations going into this game. Like, what do you want to see? What do you think we got to do? Obviously, it starts with running the football, but what do you want to see in this game for us to have a chance to win the game when it comes right down to it?
Yeah, I think imposing a physical will. Not only did the Eagles lose Monday night, I thought they got beat up. And part of this is just the short week nature, but um, they played 83 defensive snaps. That's a very, very high number. I believe I had this right. I looked it up yesterday. The last time the Colts defense played that number was in 2015. So you got to go back a long time to see, again, a defense on the field for that long. Fletcher Cox was really candid this week with the Philly media and being like, I feel like crap, man.
Yeah,
My body's hurting right now. They did a walkthrough yesterday. So, their practice routine will be a bit different. So, you have the opportunity on paper, again, a healthy Taylor, the blueprint, like you mentioned, and Sirianni knows this. Um, can you create hands on the hips in the third and fourth quarter? And I think you can do that. Now, can you prove it? I think that's the next question because we've seen this team do it 2019 Kansas City, the 2021 in Buffalo, where you face these high-powered offenses. You played a little ball control and finished off drives and played keep away. We had a conference call with Sirianni yesterday, and I pretty much said that to him. I go, and knowing Nick, I knew he would take it the right way. I was like, I watched that game Monday night, Nick, and thought that is what you guys did to Kansas City in 2019. I know you're obviously on the flip side of it now, and he's like, that's what I thought too, and kind of said it to our guys of, what Marlon Mack and we were able to do in 2019 in Arrowhead. That's now the blueprint for us, and it's a compliment in a way because of how high-powered we are, but it's also a sign that teams think that we can't stop the run without Jordan Davis. So. You saw the Linval Joseph signing, and I think it's going to be a big prove it mode. I assume some loaded boxes to try and get the Colts into a few more third and longs. I thought Washington just methodically got into third and shorts and converted those on a routine basis. So I would say my expectations have risen just based off how this team played on Sunday, and then you couple that with what happened Monday night. Having said that, it's total prove it mode. I mean, if you look at the three previous wins, Kansas City gifted you so much. I mean, Denver was, which team sucks less, I guess, is what that game felt like. And the Jacksonville game, it almost seemed like the no huddle up tempo was kind of the one-off game that almost every NFL team can create for themselves a year. They're not expecting the no huddle. All of a sudden, you do it and you have a ton of success. Now it's okay. I thought Sunday you could arguably say was like the best the Colts have played, complementary football, the run game, O-line, didn't need the no huddle, didn't need a ton of gifts. Obviously the Raiders had some issues. But still, if Michael Pittman doesn't get back on that fumble, they might lose that game. So that's where the prove it nature against a quality opponent and stringing some things together is still on my mind.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Before we get off their last question, Parks Frazier, 30 years old, man, I can just think about myself, when I was 30 years old, I was just trying to get up and make it through the day. This guy's getting asked to call play calls in the NFL. Pretty impressed with his temperament. I think he learned a lot. I think I was a little bit nervous about in-game situational football, like he's not been presented these situations. What if this happens? What if that happens? But I think he just leaned on, his conviction and what he's learned from Frank Reich, when it comes down to it. This guy got a chance, you think, to put something together and maybe ultimately, be a long-term solution as an OC in the NFL? Or is it just a little bit like, no, let's just pump the brakes a little bit on that and let's just see where it goes?
Yeah, I mean, certainly he's got to show it, a few more weeks and beyond that. But I'm with you. I mean, I thought he handled things really well. I thought the late first half management was very impressive. He mentioned he's kind of been involved with 2 men a good amount, so that probably aids him in that process. And Jeff Saturday and Parks Frazier probably want to petition the NFL to try and play the Raiders every week. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So that comes back to the prove it against, different teams. I think an advantage Parks had, because I was kind of curious about this. I asked him on Tuesday, I said, how much of that game plan shift in the week? I mean, Matt Ryan with Sam Ehlinger is different style quarterback. And he said only about 10% because they simplified things so much that it's not like they had in, an overwhelming amount, no matter who was under center. But they did create an advantage, I think, because the Raiders obviously didn't know who was going to be playing QB until, just minutes before kickoff. So that is an advantage you will no longer have, of course, with Philly preparing for Matt Ryan. But, I said it last week when Parks became the interim. This is something that Jim Irsay and or Jeff Saturday, while they might not be immediately thinking about it, they need to be thinking about it. Who is the offensive mind moving forward? Who is the guy that you're going to pair with the young quarterback? That has got to be there. Nick Sirianni's done it with Jalen Hurts. And sure, you have assistants and all of that, but Jeff Saturday is not going to be put on a headset and calling plays if he's the permanent head coach. He's going to have an OC, and you have to make sure that that young quarterback feels the rapport with some young coach, because I think so many times it just gets stymied in development because there's too much transition early on in that rookie quarterback's career with staff. So I think that it's a lofty goal, but it's a goal that, we're talking about a lot more than we were, 14 days ago. So kudos to Parks. I mean, that has got to be extremely nerve-wracking and all of that. And, little I know of him, just a good dude and a bright offensive mind. And I'll be really interested now that it's on film and now that you're going to play better defenses, how things evolve from here.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what happens this season, I think you kind of alluded to it. We still have to be thinking about a rookie. You got to find a future quarterback in this draft, right? Nothing in your mind changes when it comes to that.
No, nothing. And that would be maybe the one big picture negative of going back to Ryan is, to creep into like, oh yeah, he's definitely the guy for 2023. And I mentioned this stat on my podcast, and I'll mention it here, Zach. Right now as we go into whatever it is, week 11, you've got 9 teams in the AFC better than 500. The Colts are in 10th. The Colts are not above 500. You look at those 9 teams, all 9 have first-round quarterbacks. 8 of them were drafted by that team, Tannehill being the one that wasn't, and 8 of the 9 were taken in the top half of round 1, Lamar Jackson being the one that wasn't. So it's just another reminder of not only here in the immediate 2022 aspect of the season, but again, sustained success. It's a phrase that I use quite often. I think the only way to give yourself the best chance at trying to achieve that is to have a consistent quarterback presence. So yes, that is the path that, and really nothing in my mind will deter that or change that over the next 2 months. I'll be open-minded, but I can't envision anything that I would see that all of a sudden would get me to think otherwise.
Yeah, 100%. Should be interesting this Sunday. Jeff Saturday's return to Lucas Oil. Be a pretty cool moment for him and his family. Kevin, I know you got to hop off here, but thank you so much, man, for joining on the show, what you do for all the content creators. Guys, if you haven't checked them out, Kevin Corner's podcast, 107.5 The Fan. Kevin and Query in the mornings, Monday through Friday, 7 to 10. As always, man, you take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
You bet, man. If I don't get the chance, happy Thanksgiving, and always enjoy hopping on.
Absolutely.